Captain Lee Hannah walked slowly across the bridge of her ship, the Retribution. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Outside the large windows, stars filled the black space like tiny diamonds. But these stars did not make her feel peaceful anymore. They reminded her of everything she had lost. 3 months ago, her home planet Earth was alive and beautiful. Now it was dead. The memories still burned in her mind like fresh wounds. She could still see the bright flashes of light as enemy ships destroyed her world from space. She could still hear the screams of millions of people as their cities turned to fire and ash. The enemy called themselves the Zephyrian Hegemony. They were tall creatures that looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Their skin was covered in hard scales, and their eyes were cold and cruel. They had powerful weapons and fast ships. They've ruled over many planets across the galaxy, keeping other species as slaves. When they came to Earth, they gave humanity a choice: surrender and become slaves, or die. The leaders of Earth said no. They would rather fight than live on their knees. The Zephyrians did not argue. They simply opened fire. Sol was the first city to burn. Hannah had grown up there with her family. In just minutes, the place where she was born became a crater of melted glass. New York, London, Tokyo, and hundreds of other cities followed. The attack lasted only 6 hours, but it killed billions of people. Now Hannah commanded one of the last free human ships in the galaxy. Behind her on the bridge, 50,000 people lived in the ship's tight spaces. They were all that remained of humanity's freedom. Families slept in cargo holds. Children played in hallways that once carried only crew members. Old people sat quietly, staring at nothing, thinking about the homes they would never see again. Chief Engineer Park Min-ho worked without rest to keep the ship running. The Retribution was not built to carry so many people. Its engines were old and tired. Its air systems worked too hard to keep everyone breathing. Every day something broke down, and every day Min-ho found a way to fix it with whatever spare parts they had left. Dr. Kim Sora ran the medical bay, which was now spread across 3 different rooms. She treated sick children, helped women give birth, and cared for the wounded who still suffered from injuries received during Earth's final battle. She had little medicine left, but she never stopped trying to help people feel better. The worst part was not knowing if they were the only ones left. The Zephyrians sent hunter groups across the galaxy to find any humans who had escaped. These groups were very good at their job. They found human colonies on distant planets and destroyed them completely. No one was allowed to live free. Communications. Officer Choi Gi-won sat at her station, listening to radio signals from across space. Most of the time, she heard only silence or enemy messages. But sometimes, very rarely, she picked up human voices calling out in the darkness. Captain Jawan said suddenly, her voice excited but quiet, "I'm getting something from the Kepler sector." Hannah walked over to Gi-won's station. The young woman's hands moved quickly over her controls, trying to make the signal clearer. "It's very weak," Ji-won explained. "But I think it's human. They're using old Earth military codes." Hannah felt her heart beat faster. "Can you clean it up?" Gi-won worked for several minutes. Slowly, a voice came through the static. It was a man speaking in English, but his words were broken and scared. "This is colony ship Hope? Anyone out there? Running low on fuel. ... Zephyrian patrol ships spotted us. ... Need help." The message repeated several times, then stopped. Hannah stared at the radio equipment, thinking hard. More survivors meant more people to protect and feed. Their ship was already too crowded. They barely had enough food and water for the people they already carried, but it also meant hope. As long as humans were alive somewhere in the galaxy, they had a chance to fight back. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but someday. "Can we reach them?" Hannah asked. "If we change course and push the engines hard, we might get there in 2 days," Min-ho said. He had been listening from his engineering station. "But Captain, the engines are already working at their limit. If we push too hard, they might break down completely." Hannah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her through the worst disaster in human history. They trusted her to make the right choices. But what was the right choice when every option was dangerous? Through the windows, The stars continued to shine. Somewhere among those distant lights, other humans were calling for help. The Zephyrians had burned their home world, thinking that would end humanity's spirit. But they were wrong. As long as even one human heart still beat with hope, the fight would continue. Set course for the Kepler sector, Hannah said quietly. Maximum speed. Her crew began working immediately, preparing the ship for another dangerous journey into the unknown darkness. Of space, the Retribution drifted silently through a field of floating rocks. These asteroids were like a forest of stone in space, hiding the human ship from enemy eyes. The rocks contained special metals that confused Zephyrian computers, making the ship invisible to their scanners. For the first time in weeks, Captain Hannah felt safe enough to let her people rest. Lieutenant Yoon Daeho worked alone in the communications room, listening to enemy radio signals. He was young, but very smart with computers and languages. He'd learned to understand Zephyrian speech during the war. Most of what he heard was boring military talk about patrols and supply runs. But today was different. His hands shook as he decoded a message that made his heart race. He ran to the bridge, almost tripping over sleeping refugees in the hallways. "Captain Lee," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. "You must hear this. The Zephyrians are keeping human prisoners on a planet called Valdris Prime. The message says thousands of them." Hannah felt her stomach drop. She called her senior officers to the small meeting room behind the bridge. Commander Kang Hyok was her military advisor, a tough man who had fought in many battles. Pilot on Soyang was their best fighter, a woman who could fly through enemy fire like she was dancing. Chief Engineer Park Min-ho came too, wiping oil from his hands. They all listened to the translated message. Zephyrians were talking about moving the human prisoners to work camps on different planets. They would be separated forever, used as slaves until they died. "It's a trap," Kang Hyok said firmly. "They know we're out here somewhere. They want us to try to save these people so they can catch us." "Maybe you're right," Hannah said slowly. "But what if you're wrong? What if there really are thousands of our people down there, waiting for rescue?" "Captain, we barely have enough fuel and supplies for our own people," Min-ho said. "If we take on more refugees, our life support systems will fail. And if it is a trap, we'll lose everything," Kang Hyok added. "All these people will die because we tried to save people who might not even exist." Hannah stared at the decoded message for a long time. Outside, space rocks drifted past the windows like slow, silent ghosts. She thought about the families sleeping in the cargo holds, trusting her to keep them safe. She thought about the children who would never see Earth again. She thought about the promises she had made to protect humanity's survivors. But she also thought about the people who might be trapped on that distant planet, hoping someone would come for them. "We're going," she said finally. Captain Kang Hyok started to protest. "We're going," Hannah repeated. "But we'll be smart about it." "Soyoung, how many fighters do we have left?" 12 that can fly, maybe 8 that can fight," the pilot answered. "That will have to be enough." 3 days later, the rescue mission began. A meteor shower was passing near Valdris Prime, filling the planet's sky with burning rocks. It was perfect cover for their attack. Soyoung led 6 fighters through the meteor storm. Using the falling rocks to hide from enemy radar, Hannah took the other fighters directly to the prison complex on the planet's surface. The building was huge and dark, surrounded by high walls and guard towers. Energy shields protected it from attack, but Min-ho had found a way to shut them down for a few minutes. The human fighters dove through the planet's atmosphere, like falling stars. Laser fire lit up the night as Zephyrian defenses tried to shoot them down. 2 human ships exploded in bright flashes, their pilots dying instantly. But the others kept flying, dropping soldiers onto the prison's roof. Hannah led her team through the building's metal corridors. They found the human prisoners in large rooms, hundreds of people packed together like animals. Many were sick and weak from poor food and hard work, but their eyes came alive when they saw human soldiers coming to save them. "Quickly," Hannah shouted. "We don't have much time." Her team worked fast, breaking locks and helping prisoners too. The rescue ships. Outside, more Zephyrian forces were coming. The battle was getting worse. They saved 800 people, but the cost was terrible. Half of their fighters were destroyed. Many good pilots died in the fight. The Retribution barely escaped before enemy warships arrived in the medical bay. Dr. Kim Sora worked to help the rescued prisoners. Most were weak and scared, but alive. Among them was an old man who seemed different from the others. His name was Dr. Lim Woo-jin, and he had been one of Earth's most important scientists. "Captain," he whispered when Hannah came to check on the survivors, "I need to tell you something very important. Before Earth was destroyed, we were working on a secret project. We called it the Prometheus Protocol." Hannah sat down beside him, listening carefully. "It was a new kind of weapon," Woo-jin continued, "something the Zephyrians have never seen before. The research was hidden in 12 different places across human space, if we can find it." His old eyes burned with hope and anger. The Zephyrians thought they had won by destroying Earth, but they had made one big mistake. They had left humanity with nothing left to lose and nothing left to fear. The research station on Titan's Whisper looked dead from the outside. Its windows were dark, and no signals came from its communication towers. The small moon drifted, alone in empty space, far from any main travel routes. Captain Lee Hanna's team cut through the station's outer door with laser torches, expecting to find empty rooms and broken computers. Instead, they found people waiting for them. Colonel Shin. Min-jae stepped out of the shadows like a ghost. He was thin and dirty, with long hair and a thick beard. Behind him came 24 other humans, all carrying weapons made from station equipment. Their clothes were torn and patched, but their eyes were bright and alert. "We've been waiting," Min-jae said in a quiet voice. "The resistance is stronger than you know." Hannah stared at him in surprise. "How long have you been here?" "For months," Min-jae replied. "Since the Zephyrians destroyed our colony on New Sol, we've been using this place as a base, planning attacks on enemy supply ships." The colonel led them deeper into the station. The humans had turned the research facility into a hidden fortress. They had built sleeping areas in the laboratories and weapon storage in the old dining hall. Computer screens showed maps of nearby star systems, with red marks where Zephyrian forces were located. "We thought we were the only ones left," said a young woman named Lee Yuri. She had been a teacher before the war, but now she carried a rifle and knew how to use it. "So did we," Hannah replied. "But Dr. Lim Woo-jin told us about the Prometheus research hidden here." Min-jae's eyes grew wide. "Dr. Lim? He's alive, barely. We rescued him from a prison camp. He says the data here could help us fight back." The colonel led them to a sealed room deep in the station's center. Inside, rows of computer servers hummed quietly, their lights blinking in the darkness. These machines held the secrets that Earth's scientists had been working on before the planet died. Dr. Lim Woo-jin was still weak from his time in prison, but he insisted on coming to see the data himself. His hands shook as he typed commands into the computer. Slowly, information appeared on the screens around them. "This is it," he whispered. "The Prometheus Protocol." The data showed plans for tiny machines called nanobots. These machines were so small that millions of them could fit on the tip of a needle. But they were also very smart, able to think and work together. The scientists had designed them to sneak into enemy computer systems and break them from the inside. "The Zephyrians have never seen anything like this," Dr. Lim explained. "Their technology is very advanced, but it's also very organized. Use the same systems on every ship, every planet. If we can get these nanobots into their network, we can shut down their entire empire." While Dr. Lim worked with the computer data, communications specialist Bae Yuna set up her equipment to contact other human groups. She had been trying to reach survivors across the galaxy for months, sending coded messages through space. "I'm getting responses," she said excitedly. "Lots of them." Over the next few hours, Yuna made contact with 17 different groups of humans. Each group thought they were alone, hiding on distant planets or in space stations like this one. But they were all fighting the same war in their own way. Engineer Jo Sung-in was working on a mining planet called Red Rock. He had been sabotaging Zephyrian supply convoys by causing accidents in the mines. When enemy ships came to collect metals, they found broken equipment and worthless rocks instead. Medic Han Jun was running a secret hospital on a planet where many different alien species lived as slaves. She helped escaped prisoners hide from. The Zephyrians entreated anyone who was hurt fighting against them. Her hospital was hidden in old subway tunnels under a ruined city. Fighter pilot Nam Guan commanded a small squadron that attacked enemy patrol ships. They used old civilian spacecraft that looked harmless but carried powerful weapons. The Zephyrians never expected ice haulers and cargo ships to suddenly start shooting at them. Teacher Park Hyun-soo was teaching alien children about freedom and human rights. Many species had been slaves for so long that they didn't remember what it was like to be free. But Park showed them that all thinking beings deserve to choose their own lives. Look at what we've become, Min-jae said as they listened to reports from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians scattered us to break our spirit. Instead, they planted us everywhere like seeds. Now those seeds are growing into something they never expected. Dr. Lim studied the network of resistance groups on his computer screen. Each red dot represented humans who refused to give up, who kept fighting even when everything seemed hopeless. The Zephyrians think strength comes from having the biggest guns and the fastest ships, he said. But our strength is different. We can change and adapt. We can take their own tools and use them better than they do. We can make friends with people they've kept as enemies for years. He pointed to the nanobots' data on his screen. These little machines work just like we do. They're small and weak individually, but together they can bring down systems much bigger than themselves. Outside the station windows, stars filled the black sky. Each star might have humans near it, working and planning and preparing. Zephyrians had tried to end humanity by destroying their home. Instead, they had spread human determination across the entire galaxy, the purple and blue clouds of the Horsehead. Nebula swirled around the hidden shipyard like a thick fog. Inside this cosmic storm, where sensors could not see clearly, humanity was building its revenge. Admiral Lee Hanna stood on the observation deck of the new command station, watching dozens of ships take shape in the construction bays below. The promotion to admiral had come from the last members of Earth's government. Old men and women hiding in bunkers on distant colonies. They had given her a title, but no resources. Everything she saw before her had been built by human hands from captured enemy materials and pure determination. Engineer No Hyun-woo moved between the construction teams. It's like a conductor leading an orchestra. He had learned to take apart Zephyrian ships and put them back together in ways their original builders never imagined. Enemy engines became more powerful in human hands. Their weapon systems were improved with Earth technology that the aliens had never seen. Look at this, Hyun-woo said, showing Hannah blueprints on his tablet computer. We took their shield generator and connected it to our fusion reactor. Result is protection 3 times stronger than anything they have. In the research section of the base, Dr. Lim Woojin worked without rest on the Prometheus protocol. His team of scientists had turned the tiny nanobots into something like a computer virus, but much more deadly. These microscopic machines could sneak into any Zephyrian system and slowly destroy it from the inside. The nanobots were invisible to the naked eye, but they could think and work together. Once they got into an enemy computer network, they would spread like a disease, copying themselves and taking control of more systems. They could shut down weapons, turn off life support, or make ships crash into each other. We've created something beautiful, Dr. Lim said, looking at a tiny container that held millions of nanobots. They're like us, small, but impossible to stop when we work together. Infiltration specialist Moon Jinwoo had spent months sneaking these nanobots onto Zephyrian worlds. He was a master of disguise who could pretend to be a slave worker or a maintenance technician. He had visited 12 different planets that were important to the enemy empire, leaving behind tiny amounts of nanobots that would sleep until the right time came. The beauty of it is that they'll never know what hit them, Jinwoo explained to Hannah. These nanobots will wait quietly for months or even years. Then, when we send the activation signal, every Zephyrian system in the galaxy will start falling apart at the same time. But Admiral Hannah knew that technology alone would not win this war. The real weapon was something the Zephyrians had never understood: the power of hope. Psychologist Park Sahi had studied the enemy for months. captured documents, and interviewing alien prisoners. She had discovered something important about how the Zephyrian Empire worked. They rule through fear, Park explained during a meeting with Hannah's senior staff. Every species in their empire obeys because they're afraid of punishment. But fear only works if people believe they have no choice. Once they see that freedom is possible, fear becomes useless. This discovery had led to a new kind of warfare. Instead of just attacking enemy ships, human forces began liberating entire planets. Captain Song Chanwoo commanded the warship Liberation, leading raids that freed slave colonies across the galaxy. The first liberation had happened on a world called Dust Valley, where an insect-like species called the Thrak had been forced to work in dangerous mines. When human ships arrived and offered to help them fight for freedom, the Thrak warriors had joined the battle immediately. They were excellent fighters who could work together like a single organism. The second major success came on the ocean world of Aquatica, home to the Meridians. These fish-like people had been enslaved for over a century, forced to harvest materials from their planet's deep seas. When Captain Song's forces attacked the Zephyrian garrison, the Meridians rose up in rebellion, using their knowledge of the planet's underwater caves to trap enemy forces. Each successful liberation brought new allies to the human cause. The freed species didn't just go back to their old lives, they joined the growing fleet, bringing their own ships and weapons and knowledge. They all shared something that the Zephyrians could never understand: the absolute refusal to give up. When fighting for freedom, Admiral Hannah stood in the command center, looking at a holographic map of the galaxy. Hundreds of small lights showed where human and allied forces were positioned. Each light represented a group of people who had decided that death was better than slavery. 6 months ago, we were running and hiding, she said to her senior officers. Now look at us. We have 300 ships, alliances with a dozen species, and weapons the enemy has never seen. Commander Kong Hyok studied the tactical display. The Zephyrians still have more ships and bigger guns. Yes, Hannah replied. But they also have something we don't. Something to lose. They're fighting to keep their empire. We're fighting because we have nothing left but each other. Outside the command center windows, the nebula continued to swirl around their hidden base. The clouds looked like fire in the starlight, and Admiral Hannah thought that was fitting. The Zephyrians had burned humanity's home world thinking that would end their resistance. Instead, they had created something much more dangerous: an alliance of the oppressed, with nothing left to fear and everything to fight for. The clock on Admiral Lee Hannah's command bridge showed exactly 8 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. At that moment, across 12 different worlds, something invisible began to wake up. The tiny nanobots that had been sleeping in Zephyrian computer systems for months suddenly came to life. On the enemy capital world, defense satellites that had protected the planet for 100 years simply stopped working. Their weapons powered down, their shields disappeared, and their communication systems went silent. The same thing happened on military bases, space stations, and warships throughout the Zephyrian Empire. Prometheus Protocol is active, reported Communications Officer Bei Yuna from her station. All targets are responding. Admiral Hannah stood on the bridge of her flagship, the New Earth, watching as red warning lights appeared across the tactical display. Each light showed a Zephyrian system that had just failed. Defense grids, communication networks, weapon systems, everything the reptilian empire depended on was falling apart at the same time. Begin the assault? Hannah ordered. Captain Jung Haijin led the attack on Valdris's Prime, the prison world where they had first rescued human captives. Her ships dove through the planet's atmosphere while enemy fighters tried desperately to respond. But their targeting systems were confused by the nanobots, and their weapons fired randomly or not at all. On the industrial worlds that built Zephyrian ships and weapons, Commander Nam Taiyun's forces struck the factories and supply depots. Explosions lit up the night sky as years of enemy war production went up in flames. The Thrak warriors fought alongside human marines, their insect-like bodies moving through enemy defenses with deadly precision. In the oceans of conquered worlds, Meridian ships rose from the deep waters where they had been hiding. These aquatic allies used their knowledge of underwater warfare to attack Siferian bases from below, where the reptilian forces never expected danger to come from. But the most important battle was happening above the Zephyrian homeworld itself. This was where their supreme commander Veltar commanded the Empire from his massive flagship. The ship was the size of a small city. It's covered in weapons and protected by shields that had never been broken. Today, those shields flickered and died. As nanobots ate through the ship's computer systems, Admiral Hannah led a boarding party directly onto the enemy flagship. Her soldiers fought through corridors filled with desperate Zephyrian warriors, moving closer to the command center, where Veltar waited. The reptilian leader was nearly 8 feet tall, his green scales polished to shine like metal. Mechanical parts had been grafted onto his body to make him stronger and faster than any natural creature. So Veltar hissed when Hannah entered the command bridge. The little human comes to face me herself. You think your tricks with our computers make you warriors? Hannah drew her combat knife, a simple steel blade that had belonged to her father. I think you never understood what you were. Fighting, Veltar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You were nothing when we found your pathetic world. Primitive creatures playing with fire and metal. We gave you the chance to serve a greater purpose, and you chose destruction instead. The two leaders circled each other on the bridge while explosions from the space battle lit up the windows around them. Veltar moved with mechanical precision, his enhanced muscles and computerized reflexes making him faster than any human should be. Able to match. But Hannah had something the Zephyrian commander had never learned to fight against. She carried the anger of billions of dead humans, the hope of enslaved species across the galaxy, and the desperate determination of people who had nothing left to lose. When Veltar lunged forward with claws that could cut through steel, Hannah was already moving. She had learned to fight not in training academies, but in the ruins of her destroyed world. She knew how to use an enemy's strength against them, how to turn size and power into weakness. Her blade found the gap between Veltar's scales and the mechanical parts of his body. The Supreme Commander staggered backward, green blood flowing from the wound. You were nothing, he repeated, but his voice was weaker now. Primitives, how did you defeat us? Hannah looked into his dying eyes and saw something there she had never expected: confusion. He truly didn't understand how his mighty empire could fall to creatures he considered inferior. You forgot something important, she said quietly. Even the smallest flame can burn down an empire if it refuses to be put out. Veltar fell to the floor of his command bridge as his flagship exploded around them. Hannah's rescue team pulled her to safety just before the massive ship broke apart, taking the last symbol of Zephyrian power with it. The war was over in less than 6 hours, without their computer systems, their communications, or their supreme leader. The Zephyrian military simply collapsed. On worlds across the galaxy, alien species that had been slaves for generations rose up against their weakened oppressors. 6 months later, Admiral Hannah stood in a great assembly hall built on a neutral world. Representatives from dozens of species sat together as equals, writing the laws for a new galactic confederation. Humans worked beside Thrak warriors, Meridian swimmers, and even former Zephyrian soldiers who had chosen freedom over empire. Dr. Lim Wu-jin, now an old man but still sharp, stood beside her watching history being made. Earth is gone, he said softly, but maybe we found something better. Hannah nodded, watching a species that had been enemies for centuries learn to work together. A home among the stars, she agreed, built on the idea that no one should have to kneel to anyone else.